Hello, hello, we are live here. Hello, and furthermore, Ooga Booga. Welcome, Jenny, to this podcast. Today we're going talking about Mibera. Thank you for taking the time, and I'm very thankful and proud to be the host today, that you chosen me to make this special podcast episode about Mibera and dive into it. So we will do a two part. We will divide this podcast into two episodes, and we will talk about today about the cultural side, historical side, and on Friday we will do it again at the same time. And then we were talking about the cypherpunk side of the Mibera universe. So, if those who don't know, Janitor is the founder of Honeyjar and the Hello token and the Mibera. So, nothing we here say is financial advice. Do your own research. We just Bera here. So, we are also only two degens. And before we start about Mibera, Johnny, let me mention one thing. I want to thank you because of the Hello airdrop. I think it's one of the best airdrops which were from the execution side, which were done very well. We have a community and everyone was very happy. So that's not usual. And I just wanted to give you credits for it, because I think there was a disappointment about the Berachain Foundation airdrop. But with your airdrop, how you executed, how you onboarded a lot of people, that was very exceptional. And I think I didn't see that much credits for you on the timeline. So I just wanted to take the chance and give you credits for it. So hello,
happy
Jenny.
to hear you happy. That's good. A lot of it, we're pretty special, and by special I mean deeply autistic about the on-chain data and modeling. So I think I'm happy to hear it landed well within your community. But to be honest with you, I have no idea who your community are. So whatever they did, clearly you were doing stuff on chain that from our perspective was bearer aligned. And so in that sense, I think you should also say well done to yourselves and your community, because clearly it's demonstrated that you guys were locked in,
Yeah, thank you. So we were very deep in the trenches, but the Berachain Foundation didn't appreciate it or didn't see it like we were aligned with them. But you were on the other opinion. So we were very happy about how you executed and how you will execute in the future. I saw that Handlocker went live today.
Yes.
I needed to be quick, so these pools are filling quickly. So for those who don't know, there's a lock for the Hello tokens, which you can set, and then probably you will get BGT and Obero rewards for it. So that's a very cool feature for the Hello token. And I love how you're executing it. Yeah.
Get a taste of it. Get paid to be here. Get paid to be on Berachain.
Yeah. So let's dive into Mibera. There's a lot of aspect of the Mibera lore where we going to dive deep into it. So where do you want to start? We have a lot of questions. Tomorrow is the mint. Everyone is excited. There is no checker. There is no date and time. So what are your plans?
What the fuck? Maybe I'll put a pin in it but that feeling, this feeling that you have, this kind of anxious but anticipation, taste it, because it's, you know, it's precious. So many people around the planet right now are in that similar state, and it's a state that we felt kind of coming up in the free party movement. Like, you might be hanging around all day with your friends, listening to a pirate radio station, ringing into the phone line, like trying to see who's going to get the latest update and what's going on. So we're here with you in it. But in terms of where to start, of course we have to start with Milady. I saw you. I saw you write a post, something to the effect of Mabera's onboarded me to Milady. Can I ask about that? Like, because you were in the trenches through 2021, this type of thing. So you were around at the same time that kind of Milady emerged into the timeline. She minted at the August of 2021, same as Bongbear's the OG collection. And then they took 6 months to mint out, right? And so I think Milady is a part of all of our story, even if we weren't deeply engaging at the time. But I wonder, for you, where were you at that time? What did you think of Milady? Like, what was what's the story there from your side?
Well, I was just discovering NFTs summer 2021 when Bored Ape became a thing, and then my first thoughts about NFTs were, why are they so expensive? And I didn't really get it, so I missed Milady completely. So it wasn't on my radar, and Milady became a thing, I think, 2023, when Blur, this trading NFT marketplace, they had a new feature where you can have a loan against your NFT. And the first collection was CryptoPunks, and then Bored Apes. And the third collection was Milady. And then I was like, what the fuck? Why Milady? So that was the first time when I was conscious about Milady, that there might be something there. I saw their floor price was quite high at that time, and then was this Elon tweet from Elon Musk. He didn't knew about this meme about Milady. He just posted it. There is no meme. I love you. And then it searched like for, I think it was almost 8 ETH, so around 7.5 ETH. And then I was a Milady hoarder for a long time. I bought it around 3 ETH and hold it for half a year, I think, or 1 year. But I didn't really knew the story. I found the memes cool, and it resonated with me a little bit. But there was also always this controversy: are they racist? Are they what are they doing behind the scenes? So there were some accusations also. There was this cult token, which took very long time to release it. So there was also some FUD. But as you said, I wrote this post on Twitter and I meant it like this. So as I prepared for this interview, I just started to read these whole articles about Milady. And it was really, really fascinating. And there are a lot of aspects which were fascinating. But I want to pick out one because I think it's really important. That's what you mentioned. It took 6 months to mint it out. And if something starts, something very impactful, if there's no hype around it, you can't see that on the price. But if there's quality behind it, if there's good execution, if there's a story, if there's an ideology, it will become with time valuable. So what I saw is that already in 2021, Charlotte Fang wrote these articles, and it was really, really high quality with a lot of valuable insights, and he created something, a really big and meaningful cult, which with time found these peoples who resonated with this cult. And lately, Vitalik changed his PFP to a Milady, and that was before I read these articles. And there I thought, like, why are all these Ethereum people obsessed with Miladies? There's still a lot of Milady PFPs. So what's behind there? And when I read these articles, I got it. So I got this. Someone asked me in the comments also, what's the difference between Milady and CryptoPunks? And that was also my thought process. It's very like, it resembles a lot to the CryptoPunks, because it's an ideology, it's a cult, but it's more mimetic, and it resonates a lot more with younger, degenerate, and cultical people. So that's the first aspect of mine. If we have time, we can also touch the other aspects. That's the network spirituality. I have a lot of thoughts on it, like yin and yang, but I will let you explain it, what your thought process was behind it, and then I can maybe give a reaction to it.
Based. Sounds good. Thanks for sharing that. So the first thing I just have to say straight up, I'm a hot dog. I am in no way an expert on Milady from those early days. I've been described by kind of Milady inner circle as cringe and as doesn't get it, all of this different stuff, right? I'm too autistic to give a fuck, to be honest with you. But I do just want to say that I'm in no way like an expert or kind of archivist of that period. I was in and around and tapped into crypto at the time. That's pretty prolific on the timeline, but I tend to get obsessed with a singular set of things, and Milady was adjacent to it. And what I mean by adjacent is that, as you well know, anytime you have pioneer communities, of which bearers are a pioneer community, you have this archetype of people who are also on the hunt for other fresh narratives, emergent trends, new things coming up. And so, of course, there was a cluster of people in and around the Bong Bears at the time. Bearachain wasn't even a thing, who were just fucking obsessed with this Milady thing, right? And they really did their best to try and kind of Milady pill quite a number of bears, and they were very successful on that front to the extent that there are quite a number of OG Bong Bear holders or people who were involved at that time who are also really deep in the Remilia ecosystem. I won't name names, but they know who they are. So I just want to pay tribute to the fact that I'm not one of those. I was adjacent, I was aware, but I was still just myopically focused on bears completely. So it wasn't until 2023 that I looked closer. And I started in a similar way to you. As you've now seen, within THJ, we're like a kraken. We've got many different tentacles. We cut across DeFi, NFTs, NFTFi, meme coins, MemeFi, culture, ops, infrastructure, BD, the whole gamut, right? This is just the way Gianni's brain works. And I always foresaw that when Berachain launched, we'd need things to do. We'd need things across culture. We'd need things across NFTs. It's kind of, because we had enough time to ship, we've shipped a lot of things in each of those segments. And of course, there are now hundreds of projects on Bera. In 2023, I said to Tez from the Honeycast, who was working at THJ at the time, I was like, hey, whatever happened with that Berachain Milady deriv? So one of the things with Milady that I think is really noteworthy, and it's actually the part of Milady culture that has always interested me the most, was the derivative culture. So it was the culture of people creating collections inspired by Milady, right? Some of those have been produced by Remilia themselves, from the retarded little brothers, the Remilios, the Bonkler set, but the vast majority of derivative collections kind of emerged chaotically and organically from this grassroots vibrant feeling, right? And there's a spectrum of these different derivatives. Some of them are just cash grabs, but some of them have their own deeper laws. They've gone cross-chain. They've moved into shitcoins and this type of thing. And I know that those early Bera pioneers who were Milady pilled, they tried to get a Berachain inspired Milady derivative off the ground, and they couldn't do it. And when I dug into it, beyond the stories of we had stuff on our plate, there was other things that we needed to do. When I spoke to people, what was clear is like there was also this stumbling block of there's a contradiction here, right? And it touches on that network spirituality thing that you mentioned, is that one of the things that's really drenched throughout Milady is this kind of ideology, or I'd say competing ideologies. One of which is around, one of the really clear ones is this kind of like a return to traditionalism, the trad wife and the guns and the meat and the kind of like, it moves more into edgelord stuff, but also stuff around that meme that Grimes picked up and Elon around being kind of love pilled, clear pilled, right? And there's one of the contradictions that I think led to the stumbling blocks of the first generation of the attempt to create a derivative was that actually you had a lot of the core in-group of Milady who were anti-weed, right? And that sounds like a small thing, but when you've got a whole collection that's like bears smoking weed, there's you T-bone into the side of like a fast-moving train. And it might sound like a small thing, but it niggled at Gianni, and I was like, huh, interesting. There is this contradiction that pervades the entire community. Because on the other hand, there's this segment of Milady culture where they're sharing kind of like, for breakfast, I'm going to have this like smashed up Adderall that I'm going to sniff, and however much caffeine. You talk about like, there's a big ketamine culture. There's basically wreckhead culture present within Milady. That's kind of the underbelly. It's kind of the underground because it doesn't quite fit the official narrative that's pushed by, let's say, Milady core around Remilia and this type of thing. But the fact of the matter is that the transgressive vibe of Milady speaks to people who are open to using substances to alter their consciousness. It's a contradiction. Now, a contradiction to Gianni is like fucking catnip, right? I'm like, what is the nature of this thing and why? And that really has triggered an intense 2-year period of just like really drilling into that. And it led to, to bring the story back around, I said to Tez, hey, this was Q1 of 2023, just to out myself, right? I wasn't even Milady pilled at that time. I was just like, what happened with the Milady Berachain deriv? We're looking for things to do. We've got a gap in our production capacity. let's just spin up a derivative and be done with it. Then there'll be something to do, right? Tez and a few others were a bit, I think they were closer to the, not that they're Milady themselves, but they were more aware than I was of just how strong a cult and just how strong of a feeling people felt towards Milady, to the point that if we went the route that I had initially said, we would have got flamed to shit, because it would have been seen as kind of shallow, it would have been seen as kind of extractive, would have been seen as cringe. And it would have been, actually. I was just coming at it more from the perspective of, it's important for us to have things to do. The quality doesn't necessarily, at that time we thought, Bearer Chain's 3 months away, we've got to act quick, right? 2 years later, we have a chain now. Yeah, once Tez drilled in, he came back to me and was like, hey, look, here's some of the stumbling blocks, here's some of the blockages. I was then like, well, let's kind of make it happen. And to be honest, in those early days, Tez was the one who really kind of curated what was the kernel and what became what we now know as Mabera, in the sense that he went away, I think, chat with Smokey, he chatted with the folks from Scatter, got Charlotte Fang into a group chat. They were roughly speaking about, hey, we're thinking of doing one, is that cool with you? Would you recommend an artist? And that's how we got introduced to the artist who has produced what is now Mabera. So that was like the kernel.
That was Gumi, right?
Gumi, yeah. Gumi Lady, but we're gonna murder Gumi Lady soon, and so that the transformation through to Gumi Bearer is complete. Watch this space. But the thing that I then, at that point, I was very hands off. I think there was maybe a month, 2 or 3. And I would periodically check in on them. Or not even periodically, I'd just be like, hey, how's it going? And I'd get some reports back. Around, I believe it's August of 2023, I then actually descended into the Mabera server. And at this point, that was the point where I kind of was looking around. I was like, okay, I don't feel structure here, so let me go away and figure out the structure. And that was when I read Charlotte's writings. And I read, if you do nothing else off the back of this call, go away to goldenlight.mirror.xyz and read Milady Maker notes on the design process. For those of you who are asking what's the true difference between a CryptoPunk and a Milady, this document is your answer. CryptoPunk is a standalone cultural object that derives its power from it being this moment in time, and it's a store of cultural value. But part of its store is it's a bit like a Da Vinci in the sense that it's meant to be like stone. It's meant to be, it's not really meant to change, right? That's why Yuga gets so much backlash whenever they try and do a thing. They get so much flamed because it's meant to be like a stone, like from the Greco-Roman period, but it's out in a crypto version. Milady is not that. Milady is a living, breathing thing. It has an emergent, chaotic crew of people, a philosophy and ideology. It's weak now, to be honest with you. Like, that's part of the reason why a famous kind of left of center centrist kind of who is very even-tempered, such as Vitalik, who's a complete G. I don't mean this in a negative way, but for someone like Vitalik to feel comfortable to put on a Milady is a sign of the weakness of Milady culture, to be honest with you. He never would have got away with that back in the day, when there was this kind of real, vibrant, chaotic, transgressive moment. They were too hot to handle for most people, and it was a cultural filter for people who were really internet native. But yeah, to go back to CryptoPunk versus Milady, this you will see if you read Milady Maker notes on the design process, kind of the depth of consideration around the purposefulness of what they're setting out to achieve. There's a number of different aspects here, but I'm going to pause because what happened to me then was I read that And I honestly became very obsessed, and I read every article. I went and found every podcast, every Spaces. I read every main Twitter account from their most recent post right back to when they first started posting. I went back into the depths of Mia and what that was, and dug up archives of that and read all of that. And it was in that process that the question of what is this contradiction within Milady culture, where you have wreckheads who do drugs, sniff Adderall, do ketamine, smoke weed, but they love Milady, guns, and whatever. But then you've also got this other side of Milady, which is about tradfi, cute Asian girls, neats, clear pill living, I'm so love pilled, traditional values, anti-cancel culture. Those things have so much friction, and I started to see a pathway through those contradictions, and it was in the emergent realization I had was the reason that people struggled to make a Berachain times Milady derivative is because it's not possible. It's ideologically like it's just axiomatically kind of diametrically opposed. And so what really was needed was actually an anti-derivative to draw from calculus. What was needed was another main character. What was happening to Milady was a deep imbalance and fracturing in the culture that was eating itself. And really what was needed was a new character to step into the scene that said, do you know what? I do drugs. I'm into altered states of consciousness. Like, I fucking love raving. It's chill. Like, we don't need to fight about it. You don't want to own that? You don't need to. It's cool. In a similar way that the Batman universe is made deeper by the entrance of the Joker, we wouldn't say the Joker is a derivative of Batman. They're two distinct entities with energetic forms, but they're bound in Gotham, the yin and the yang. So I'm going to pause there because we can go way deeper than this, but that was the starting point.
I love that depth, and I love listening to you, and I read the comments, and they love also listening to you. So that's a free podcast, so we can dive deep into it as how much as you want. I have one aspect to this yin and yang thing. I'm a bit sometimes also a bit philosophical, and tend to have also imaginations without drugs. So I was thinking a lot about it. You mentioned quite a lot of times that Mibera is not a derivative but an anti-derivative, and they're like yin and yang, and there's a philosophical aspect to it. Yeah, like yin and yang, those who don't know, can't exist without each other. So in every yin there is a little bit of yang, and in every yang there is a little bit of yin. Batman can't exist without the Joker. Joker can't exist without Batman. There is no dark without light. There is no light without dark. So if we it's so strange, because you can have two lines. So you can have this lines where you do drugs and you have hallucinations and you don't know what is real and what not, and you can have these philosophical thoughts where you come to the same conclusion, what is real and what is not. So that's the beauty about it, and that's the art about it, which resonated with me also in the Milady universe. So that's like a performance act too, and all captured in an NFT collection. So it's amazing. So, and I think
let's double click into it. But keep going with what you're saying. But let's come back to this.
Yeah, I only wanted to. Yeah, that's one aspect of it. So yin and yang, Mibera to Milady. As I wrote, through Milady, I discovered through Mibera, I discovered the Milady art and lore and history. So they really coexist. They really complementary, and they're not against each other, but they're interconnected. And I think it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I just look. I'm not saying we're here to kind of all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Like the dark fights the day as much as the day fights the night to emerge victorious for yet another 12 hours. And inevitably, already, without kind of going into too many details to kind of reveal networks of information flow, this war is already at play. Like whether it's named in the timeline, whether we're in the eye of the storm. But that's also okay. Like it's expected. We've been preparing for this. And it's necessary. Like, to be honest, Milady has been a bit like KO'd on a deathbed and has needed a shock to the system for a while. Milady thrives in chaos, whether like folks want to name that or not. And the timeline's been dry as fuck for a while, to be honest with you. But to come back around drugs, right? To actually name it really much more accurately, what we're talking about is altered states of consciousness. Now, we've gone the route of like really celebrating drugs, but what are some other ways that you can alter your states of consciousness? You can breathe in a different way. Meditation, like holotropic breathing, these types of things. Like there are altering your state of consciousness is not a new pursuit. It's not specific to kind of modern cultures. It's existed as far as we can tell, and from living cultures that are still here, who've passed on knowledge from way back. These types of practices have existed with humans for a really long time.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I do that. So I love that because I do sometimes 2 times a week. I go to the sauna, and after that I have a cold plunge, and after that you have this state where you lay down and you feel like
it's a rush of endorphins.
Yes.
You're on drugs, but you've made your own.
Yeah,
like you're your own drug factory, right?
Yeah.
Like extremes in temperature, breathing, near-death experiences, dreaming, DMT that's released from your pineal gland on death and birth. Like this is an aspect of human experience, right? Now, the thing that Milady did, which was really interesting, and they speak about it in the form of the egregore, network spirituality, this type of thing, is essentially put on a Milady, right? Is a form of changing and altering your state of consciousness. And they talk about it in terms of tapping into the schizo posting element, copy left culture, copy paste, copy pastas, don't attribute your writing, be free from identity, fuck cancel culture, say what you want when you want, be racist as fuck, be transphobic, be whatever, like it doesn't matter. Like that's the kind of altered state of consciousness. That's a pendulum swing. I won't get into that element for now because I've got an entire set of thoughts around that. But to name it is essentially what's at play is the way in which each collection owns altered states of consciousness or not. I'll get cancelled by Miladies for this, but fuck it, whatever. There's a contradiction there again, in the sense that the way that Miladies kind of in the past enforced that altered state of consciousness of put on the Milady post, schizo post, is on the surface of it. So as above, I very much come from this tradition of as above, so below. Anytime the above is different to the below, I'm like, what's going on here? Because there's a different game being played if above is different than the below. And so on the surface of it with Miladies, they talk about this kind of freedom culture, talk about freedom of expression. And at the same time, the intensity of the police state within Milady, of policing its borders, of in-group, out-group establishment, of coup culture, trying to like all of these different things which when you get into the inside of the culture are kind of like they're divergent from the actual kind of expressed kind of online expression of it. And I think what happens when you have that type of thing is you get people who are pulled into a vibe, the aesthetics, the communicated external ideology, and it attracts people like moths to a flame in a sense, or resonant spirits or fellow travelers. But then as they get deeper into the culture, you start getting these kind of schizophrenic barriers where you realize like, oh, there are actually things I'm not allowed to say here, or I'm not actually allowed to do. There are conventions and all of this type of stuff. Now, we see it most recently with Charlotte Fang coming to me and being like, I don't think about you at all. And then behind the scenes, she's fuming, right? So anyone who is in and around her has to live in this state of, let's say, split personality, where on the timeline, they have to be like, pretend that, oh yeah, we're not really aware of what these guys are doing. But in their kind of porous, open channel behind the scenes, they're stewing, right? And I think the question for folks who are in and around that stuff is some people are willing to live within delusion or dichotomies. And then for a lot of other people, those types of states are kind of, to be honest, intolerable. And so it's these types of contradictions, I think, that's kind of, to be honest, bled Milady culture out from the inside out, to be honest with you. I'm not in it, so this is just my observation as an interested outside observer. But I think we can also see it with the vibrancy of feeling emerging from that culture compared to what it used to be. And I think this is, if not the whole story, a part of it, right? And so Mabera, we're taking a really different approach. But the final contradiction that I want to mention, and it's the one that we really drilled into as the genesis for Mabera, was Milady, of course, emerged from post-COVID times. Everyone was terminally online, chronically online. It was where a lot of these kind of boiler room group chats emerged from. Hot Pot, these types of things, where people started to get a flavor and a taste for kind of being in and sharing the synchronicity engine, building up a shared mental model, and this kind of orchestrated sense of power online, as we've seen through the emergence of the internet since time immemorial, from, I don't know, Reddit, 4chan, other weird spots, kind of going back all the way to the Well, GeoCities. There's always been these emerging chaotic power centers that are really fringe. But the thing that really interested Jenny was the Milady raves, right? Because they were another contradiction. It's this rave culture is this deeply rooted, transgressive, like countercultural trend and movement, right? And it really spoke to Jenny because that is the movement I grew up in, right? I was running around naked at these things as like a tiny kid, right? I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean, I was a wild child, right? Born in that type of an era. So when Milady was kind of going down the route of naming and engaging with rave, that part of it, I was just like, fuck yeah. But as I dove into these other aspects of Milady culture, Milady philosophy, the Milady police state, let's call it, or at least, let's say, the cultural enforcement unit. That was where Mabera kind of emerged. And in the very early state, we called Mabera's like the Unabomber cousin. She's like the one who it lives out in the woods, a bit away from society. She does what the fuck she wants. She does goes and eats whatever mushrooms in the woods, gets high as fuck. And then that was the kind of the persona. She's the one who, in the UK kind of free rave scene, there was a lot of this outrage culture by the mainstream media, where parties would be put on, buildings would be taken over, fields would be occupied for months on end. And then you'd get the mainstream media basically being like, thugs and drug maniacs are having wild sex parties and eating the heads of bats and shit like this, right? On the mainstream news. And the young people of that generation were just like, fucking cool, where's that happening? I need to get there now, right? It was like a bat signal into the sky of like, wow, that's where the action is. And so that was where Mabera kind of started philosophically, and everything built up from there. But it was around the contradiction to do with drugs. It was around the contradiction between above and below. And yeah, as I started to read into Charlotte Fang, I saw that there were a number of influences, such as with the CCRU and Warwick in the UK, which I have personal connections with, and I understand the atmosphere from which all that kind of set, that milieu of writers and thinkers were producing their knowledge in a context. And so Jani comes from the understanding that things don't get produced or emerge in a vacuum. Things emerge from moments in time, atmospheres, cultural moments, technological stuff which is available, and it's the combination of all of those things that then produce the next wave of stuff. And so I saw with Milady, they kind of went down the route of all of this accelerationism thinking with Nick Land and that type of stuff. But Nick Land was not the only writer within CCRU. But I also understand that Nick, Mark, all of that crew who were there, they were ravers, right? They were like touched by the free party culture and the spirit of DIY, the transgressive nature of those scenes, the free use of drugs for those who wanted, literally fighting the cops. Like there being moments where there was more of you than there was the cops, then you just like broke through their lines and did your thing anyway. And then they would leave because they'd be like, there's too many of them, fuck it. The power that comes from like having those types of experiences infuses your philosophies. It infuses your imagination of what's possible. And so that is drawing down on a lot of those different cultural moments in person that's kind of fed into Mabera. I'm realizing now an hour is too short to really pull all of these different threads. But within, if you read the Milady design note, you will see that actually the closest mirror to that design document is the Law 6 document for Mabera. And you'll see essentially Law 6 is more or less a mirror of the Milady Maker design document. And you'll see that within Mabera, there is a reflection of each component of Milady, but we've taken it in our own way, fused by this engine of cypherpunk ideology, because ultimately we're cypherpunks. That's a big difference between Milady and us. Like if it's Charlotte versus Jani, the difference is Charlotte is a writer and a thinker, and maybe kind of an art critic, art theorist, and maybe an online performance artist. And over on the other side, I'm a retard when it comes to that stuff. I'm not smart. I'm what in other things might be called a guerrilla intellectual. That is like, I'm not formally trained. Like the way I think and view has come from like the trenches. It's come from the gutter. But I'm a deep technologist. I'm a cypherpunk. I'm a cybernetician. And so one of the big differences between Mabera and Milady is that we don't just talk about this tech. Like we actually, the stories that we write influence the code that is inside the DNA of the Mabera. And so I think you can think of Mabera as like the cybernetic rave teenage kind of counterpart to the Clear Pill, kind of more pure, maybe more philosophical, more, let's say, online performance art stuff. And we can kind of get into some of the deeper notes here, like a lot of the stuff around the coup with Milady. A lot of that stuff, to be honest, happened because Charlotte's not technical on that level. Like if you don't hold the credentials to the code, if you don't hold the credentials to the different like web infrastructure, Of course, you're gonna have stuff like what happened with them around their 9/11, with Blankla's now fucked because there's feuds with the devs. Like Milady themselves are not devs, so then they need to hire in from the outside. The dynamics between kind of the organizational dynamics there aren't conducive to trust. And so you have all of these differences that kind of manifest in different ways. Whereas Mibera has been built by, to be honest, a crack troop unit of cypherpunks who are able to ship and deliver technology projects that aren't derivative. Like, we invent, we have a shape and a vision of what you can do with stuff. And we'll get into this in the second part. But I think that also impacts culture. It impacts the vibrancy underpinning. I'm being really unfiltered here. I'm very happy to speak to Charlotte directly on her spaces, because I'm sure I'm being unfair and inaccurate in a lot of these statements. As I said at the top, I'm not an expert. A lot of this is Janny's opinion from my outside observer perspective, but also I'm a Janopticon, right? People, I've got eyes everywhere. People come and tell me shit from everywhere. I've been in crypto since 2011, full-time since 2013. I know how to operate this space. Yeah, there's not much in the kind of contemporary scene where people don't come and talk to Janny about stuff, just because I'm like the agony aunt, but also pirate captain / whatever. And so I do, although I'm not deeply connected with Charlotte, I see, like, I can't, you can't fugue me, you know. You can't say something is one way when it's actually another way. Like, I both see what you're saying and I see what you're doing. It's like, this is, I don't know, but I'm going to pause there. Some ways that we could go, for example, within Mibera, there's this idea of different rave traditions. So we've pulled from New York, Chicago, Detroit. We've pulled from acid house culture. We've pulled from free techno culture. And one of the pillars of the rave culture that we've pulled from is Milady, to pay tribute. I know I'm coming across as fairly uppy here, but I just want to reiterate, I love the grassroots Milady culture. Like, I consider myself kind of a twin spirit. I wouldn't say I'm a Milady. I never have been. I wouldn't espouse myself to be. But I'm not into centralization, is the thing. And I think there are aspects of centralization in Milady that, to be honest, tear it down. And that's what it comes down to. So I don't want to, if I'm making enemies amongst the Milady world out there, I hope it's the centralization maxis and not the kind of like chaotic grassroots decentralization maxis. I would hate to be making any enemy of people who I think are accomplices in this kind of wider mission that we have in crypto, I think.
Yeah, it was a bit contradictory, because they promoted like these network effects of the Milady culture, and they were aligned with the Remilio babies, with the Shizo, and I think lately with the Retardios they had also beef. Now with Hypeo on Hyperliquid, I don't know how they stand to that, but yeah, there, as you say, something has changed a bit. But yeah, it's I don't know if it's the path to have beef with them. Maybe they are open to a conversation, but I don't know if Mibera needs to have this confirmation from the Milady community. I think Mibera will evolve with time, and then some of the Milady people can decide if it's something they can
100%. Yeah.
align with.
Don't get me wrong. We're not like, I think that's why the thing with anti-derivative is Joker doesn't ask Batman for permission to do stuff, right? You just do stuff. And I think a lot of the tension in and around kind of the Milady world is who has a right to claim Milady. Now, there's to name explicitly the tension. If we say that Milady is this distributed set of characteristics, ideology, and spirit that has emerged a lot of its power from a grassroots emergent movement, then I can see one argument where essentially it's like, well, if I embody the spirit, if I believe in the philosophy, then I can put this moniker, I can name myself Milady. But then you've got over at the other end of the spectrum, you've got those who are more kind of the central planning unit of, we get to decide what's officially Milady and not. We will sue you in the courts for not actually being the actual Milady, but at the same time kind of espousing values around being anti-state, decentralization maxis and this type of thing. Those two extremes on that gradient are diametrically opposed. And I think a lot of the source of a lot of the tension over the last years from their camp. On the Mabera side, we're making zero claims as to what is Mabera or not at the cultural layer. We're just like, fuck it, let it be anarchic. Let whoever wants to claim it, claim it. That's cool. We're not going to put any effort into policing that at all. At the code level, though, there is a system that if you want to tap into, and we'll get into this in the technical call, there is a means and a mechanisms to have more or less alignment with the infrastructure of Mabera. So on the technical layer, it's enforced. There are means, mechanisms, and structured ways of contributing to the existing Mabera economy, right? That doesn't exist in the Milady culture. Like, a lot of it is handled at the cultural layer, conventions, and this type of thing. And so they have to use a lot of their resources with these types of enforcement on a cultural layer. And within Mabera, we're just like, fuck it, who wants to do that type of work? I don't want to be a cop.
Well, very interesting. It's so crazy. Tomorrow is the mint, but we don't know nothing about the structure. And I think there was the Milady community got whitelisted for Mibera. Did you change that?
Yeah.
Okay. So now all whitelists are
they're included in some of our pre-processing of the whitelist that we've got. We've added weights for folks who hold Romelia assets in their wallets. When we started out, we were much more so. Historically speaking, Charlotte put out, I believe, in 2022, fuck, I forgot the language, but what makes a friendly derivative? And a friendly derivative is one that whitelisted Miladies to be able to mint. It maybe gave some amount of free to existing Miladies. It put at least 20% of the liquidity, I believe, in NFTX at the time. So they were trying to, this is what I mean about cultural enforcement, right? So essentially what they were saying is, if you follow these standards, then like we're not gonna flame you, right? And so that was, to be honest, our starting point many years ago. As I've become more clear in the vision with Mabera, it doesn't make any sense to pay that tribute to. It would be like Joker going on some wild mission, getting getting the bag, and then turning up to Batman's cave and being like, "Yo, here's the rent." It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so maybe we can move on, and I don't know what you want to cover in this episode for the cultural and historical things. I have a lot of questions about the sets, about the tributes, about the how Mibera will look like. So I don't know if you want to cover that or in the second part.
No, let's just keep. There's a lot to. We're not going to cover everything. We've been working on this for. We're going to work on this for. We've been working on this for more than 2 years now, and by working I mean daily there's at least one person spending between 6 to 8 hours per day, right? And that's at minimum. There have been periods where there's like 6 of us spending each 12 hours a day focused on this stuff, and we've produced an absolute mountain of stuff. So even if we did a 4-hour interview right now, we would just scratch the surface. So it's okay if we miss some stuff. I think maybe a way to go. Fuck it. What questions do you have? Let's be chaos.
I don't know. Before we wrap up, I want to ask if you want to share something about the mint. So what can we expect? What is the guaranteed phase? Will we have time? There are a lot of people who are anxious about it. And
so
we are in Europe.
I can say this about the mint. We'll make sure that each phase, that every time zone has a fair opportunity to get in at that phase. It's not FOMO timing. There's no short windows. We've built a very based on. I've done 100% of the whitelist process up to this point. Now, Fent and Fedor are contacting some of the bearer communities, gathering addresses, but let's say 80% of the whitelist database. So by this point, I don't know how many is that. More than 6,000 people I've handled personally. Like, I've done this myself. If there's mistakes, they're my mistakes, right? This has been highly curated process. And in that process, I've fucked off a lot of people. Sorry for that. Sorry for your loss. I didn't quite understand the legacy kind of wider NFT world and how it worked in terms of collaboration managers, alpha groups, other NFT collections, Alphabot, whitelist politics, the things that can go well, the things that can go badly, teams way over allocating different stuff, which then means you've got the emergence of professionalized service providers who run stuff like bots. And I, to be honest, was aware of all of the existence of this stuff, but I didn't deeply know it. Now I deeply understand it. We've built a system that is meant for the best experience for the people who want to be involved. So phase 0 will be an airdrop. That's people who've already essentially bought Mibera by buying sets over the last years. So we've already sold $1 million worth of Miberas over the last few years through different forms, right? That's money we have in hand, and that is about 3,500 worth of Mibera that's already accounted for. Those people, you just chill. Once Mibera are available, we'll airdrop them to you. You don't need to claim them. You don't need to do whatever. They will land in your wallet. All you'll need to do is let us know which wallet. Actually, no, that's not true. They're going to arrive in the wallet that have the sets and the assets that give them the entitlement. Phase 1 is everyone and every artist and every bearer project that Gianni has hand selected to get what is typically called guaranteed. We call it phase 1. And there'll be, let's say, an 18-hour window where phase 1 will be active. And so people will deposit their funds into the site, that the spot that we've got set up. And those spots are one-to-one. Like, if you're in phase 1, and if you turn up within that 18-hour, we'll define the times. And as long as you deposit your funds within that time frame, you've got your Mibera. Phase 1 does stack up to a limit. So if you've received Mibera from a few different routes in that category, then they stack up to a limit. I need to run some pre-processing to figure out what the ranges are there and if they're acceptable, if it works, before committing to exactly what the stackable amount is. Then we move to phase 2. Any supply that hasn't been consumed by phase 1 also flows through to phase 2. Now, phase 2 has slight over allocation. we're not going above 20%. And this section is more meant for people where there is some intermediation between us and the people who are in that section. What I mean by that is if we have been contacted by a NFT founder or a project from outside of Bera, such as through the Henlo process, or an alpha group, then you're in that phase 2. And the reason for that is I don't have a personal connection with you. Everyone in phase 1, except Bera projects, they get special treatment. They've been in the eco for a long time. I also trust the founders to know their community. So there's that level of trust there that's been established over a number of years, where I've said, I don't personally need to meet each one of those people, although we probably do know each other. In phase 2, we're new friends, let's put it that way. And so in this phase, there is some slight over allocation, theoretically speaking. Maybe not if not everyone exercises their option in phase 1. And phase 2 will also be open for like some 18-hour window to make sure no time zone is fucked. And you deposit your funds into phase 2. And then that doesn't guarantee that you get a Mebera. It's 1 per wallet in this phase. So each wallet, even if you've arrived in from multiple different alpha groups, you will only be allowed 1 in this phase. And once that 18-hour window closes, then we'll use an oracle to run a raffle of the people who are in there, and that will determine who gets the supply. So there's no benefit to people running bots. There's no benefit to rushing. The people who are in first don't have benefit over the person who's in last. If you don't get selected, sorry for your loss, but you can get a refund there and then you just withdraw it from the contracts that we've built. Then we move to phase 3. Phase 3 is for holders of Milady Motherfuckers, Milady MFers. That was Gumi Lady's original collection that she made. It was one of the well-loved Milady derivatives. It's actually the source of a lot of drama, is that there are the Milady centrists are like, you took one of our artists that we love and you turned her into an op. Like that's seems to have hurt a lot of feelings. But on the other hand, we have a lot of love from people who love Gumi's art, who are on the Milady side, who just fucking love the art, and it's chill. So there's Milady MFers, there are THC, so the Honeycast, and there's Honeycombs. Now, for THC and Honeycombs, we have Sybil filtered them. So anyone who's been expecting to be able to bot stuff or come in, that will be kind of one per unique holder, as far as our algos have determined. So that's phase 3. That will also be, let's say, another 18 hours. And then it's phase 4. Phase 4 is the public mint. Any supply that is left over will be available to mint on Magic Eden on the 20th of April, 420. If there is no supply left for the public mint, then we will start the art reveal on 420. We've got a quite special set of experiences for you, but also pretty much on 420, the liquid backing treasury will also become available pretty soon, but certainly before the end of May, maybe on 420 itself. Yes, in terms of who fits into each of those phases, we'll publish that so you know, but also it will be clear in the interface. You'll see what you're getting and why. Yeah, hopefully that's enough information. I know I've given you 0 details on time and 0 details on what's happening, but don't worry about it. I know you're going to worry, but don't worry about it. It's not going to be a case of you fall asleep, you wake up and it's done. That's not going to happen to anyone. However, if someone has walked off and they come back in 2 weeks and they're like, what the fuck? I'm sorry for your loss. We can't do anything about that.
Yeah, that was my fear, that we in Europe now we are going to sleep and then we wake up in 8 hours and it's minted out. But now for me it's enough when you say there's 18 hours of time to mint it. So perfect. Hey, it's very detailed and very thought out. 420, I love it, but I hate it that I have to wait so much to to watch what I will get. But yeah, it's amazing. I don't know if you want to.
You'll get something. You won't be left with nothing. Well, you'll get something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if you want to talk here about this liquid baking stuff.
That's definitely a part 2.
Part 2. Okay.
Yeah. But what we can let's so if we jump into this, maybe I don't know how long this will take. I know we booked an hour, but I'm happy to.
I have time.
So maybe we can talk about the sets, because I think they imbue some of the cultural lore.
Yeah, please.
So for those of you who don't know or are new, maybe you already do know, THJ/Janny are the top grossing author in Web3, selling articles about bears and Meberas through the Mirror platform and now Paragraph. At the time that we were doing that, more than 33% of all money that had been made on Mirror was made by us about bears and now about Mebera. The original articles, they made up this thing called Infinity Gate, and they were to do with the minting of Honeycomb and then entering into Apiology DAO. If you don't know what Apiology DAO, check out the interview that we did last time. Maybe we can share a link, because it's still one of the better places, or you can read the docs. So when we were starting out, how do we start this go-to-market for Mebera? Again, this whole time, remember, we never knew when Bearer Chain was launching, so we've always been kind of working as quickly as we can. And so I was pretty like, okay, let's do 7 articles, a similar structure to the Infinity Gate approach. Sunbearer, who makes videos over at the foundation, he didn't at the time, but he does now. And Tez came to Janny at some point and was like, hey, we've spoken, and actually we'd like to propose a different way of distributing this. By this point, we'd already started to formulate the law and the theory. We'd oriented around this notion of exploring altered states of consciousness, of celebrating rave culture, of going down the route of anti-derivative. And so Tez and Sunbearer are like, hey, what if we were to make videos and music and rave posters alongside the articles to convey more of the multimodal layered aspects of what has gone into Mebera culture? So that's really where that form came from. And so instead of a 7 article collectible go-to-market series, we then had a 28 asset go-to-market, where across 7 weeks, we revealed layers of the lore over a 7-week period. I believe actually it wasn't 7 weeks. We took a break over Christmas. I think there was a 2-week break, and then we did laws 6 and 7. And the structure of it was that if you held, there are different combinations that you can hold. For example, if you hold the article, the music track, the video, and the rave poster from Law Week 1, that's known as Law 1 set. That's a simple set. A strong set would be all of the music videos from Laws Weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's all of a type. And then a superset is all 28 collectibles. And of course, because we're bastards, supply was shrinking as you went from week 1 to week 7. And so essentially what this did was, for those who have sets, it gives them a guaranteed spot for each set that they hold. So they for each set they hold, they have one whitelist in phase 1. For the strong sets, they're going to get airdropped the US dollar value of whatever they spent on a strong set. They've essentially pre-bought a Mabera. So they end up with both the strong set and the Mabera. And then those who have a super set have the US dollar value of Mabera airdrop to them. And they get an airdrop of every tributary that officially is connected with Mabera. So we as a team will buy from those other collections. For example, Steady Teddy. We will buy enough of the Steady Teddies from Steady Teddies, and then we'll airdrop them to people who hold the super set. So people who hold a super set, they basically get one of every single NFT that emerges from this Mabera economy, as well as, I believe it's 28 Maberas per superset that they hold in terms of value. Now, that sounds like a lot, but that's how much money they spent. That's how much money they spent, and they spent it back in 2023, 24. And that it's a whole... we've got a June dashboard which breaks down these numbers. It's not a lot, but they're the core. They are the cabal, right? But also they were paying attention for 2 years now, and they put their money on the table, right? They've invested. Remember, we raised $1 million this way, $1 million US. And so the core community. And this is maybe one of the things which we can say and observe from Berachain, we can observe it from Milady, is the crucible of culture formation that happens through some type of adversity or some type of duration is quite immense for the cult building process, let's say. With Milady, they didn't mint out for 6 months, right? People who really love the art, they're connected with the vibe, the memes, the culture. It attracted people who truly believed, like that you didn't have any of this FOMO. People were buying in slowly. It was a grind, right? That's why I do not mind how the mint goes. It can go for 6 months, it can go for 12 months. I actually don't give a fuck. Like, that is not how we measure success. It doesn't matter. What that will do is it will train and give you this crucible where you're actually filtering for people who truly believe and they're truly in it. That is an oil field for online culture formation on the internet. It's been that way for a long time, and it will continue to be that way. With the Bong Bears and the Berachain community, of course, they waited for a chain for 3 years, right? That's part of the reason why we're only a month or two into this chain, and it's got more culture than fucking Ethereum in terms of its concentration, right? And so with Mabera, we have also gone through this. One of the reasons you may notice, for example, compared to, let's say, Bullers or THC and afterwards Steady Teddy, for a long time, Mabera were quiet. And that was purposeful. I was like, people came to me and they were like, when are you going to start marketing? I'm like, it's already done. Don't worry about it. Right? A week before we start the mint, I start bull posting Mabera, and now it's fucking everywhere. Why? This is why. It's because for 2 years, you've had people who've invested more than $1 million of their money, and they've deposited it there waiting for this thing. And it's just been building like a slow boil, like a fucking cockroach in the nuclear apocalypse. It doesn't matter what's going on. It's there. It's not going anywhere. The moment you decide you actually want to cook the pasta, like you've got the pot in the slow boil, you turn it up a few notches and then bang, it's boiling. Like, that's what we're dealing with, right? And this is the reason. And so there's also a funny anecdote. Let me tell you about it. It was one of our first engagements with bots, right, is we had this, it's legendary, this story. It was around, I believe, law 4 or 5 or 6. We had this infamous now character in Deep Mibera law, where he turned up and on mint day, he bought everything with a bot, right? So bought everything and it all went to him. So then basically you can imagine what happened to the hundreds of people who were fucking dialed into shit trying to play this game that had been set up. And it happened when I was at the gym. I kind of put down the weights, kind of went over, cracked open the laptop, and then basically changed the metadata for all of the law documents, the articles for that day. And I basically changed it to an image that said, this has been bought by a cursed botter, don't buy on secondary. Now, a few maniacs did, but not a lot. And then the botter, Grossbearer, came into the Mibera server and said, deep name or janitor, can we talk? Right? And so he arrived in and I was like, look, he was like, this is unfair. You even said you didn't mind bots. Like, I didn't break any rules. And I was like, well, like, I'm also free to do what I want, so I'm not breaking any rules and whatever. And he's like, well, it's unfair. And he ended up sending back all of the NFTs to Janny, right? And I don't know if I took the righteous route here or the equitable route, but what I ended up doing was then airdropping all of those NFTs to all of the existing holders who held any. So essentially this botter like bought the entire supply for the actual community, right? So you had this moment of, I hope he doesn't come and like hunt me down and kill me, you know what I mean? Maybe, who knows, it'd be a chaos thing to happen. But you had this experience, like a massive trauma bonding moment. Like everyone who was really in the grind turning up. Remember, people were turning up to these mini mints and they were getting fucking ferocious for like a 7-week period, right? And people were distraught, like so sad, right? And then salvation, like then jubilation, like that hits different. Like when you have hundreds of people who've had that experience together, someone's done a write-up of it. I have to share it. Still need to figure out the people who did spend a fuck ton of money on secondary to that grocer person. But yeah, like when you have those types of experiences deep in the genetic code of a culture, like you end up having, I don't know, to use an equivalent in the free party scene that I grew up surrounded by experiences that if there was a line of cops trying to stop you from going somewhere, and if there were more of you than them, you just fucking ran through them. Like if they tried to pull one person aside, you swarmed that person, you pulled them out. Like the sense of empowered agency that you get, I think like is part of the reason why Janny felt very confident to do zero Mibera marketing, zero until a week ago. And then we turned up the gas and now we see what we see. It's because actually there are thousands of people lying in wait to party online. And we're not measuring success by how quickly it mints. We're not measuring success by like all of these other factors. We're measuring success by, is this a place people want to make a home of or not? And that we've already won. Like it is already a place that people are. With like, I would never ask someone to wear a Mibera. Like if there's someone putting on a Mibera, you know they're doing it because they fucking want to, right? We will never incentivize it. We will never request it. We will never expect it. And this type of thing. But yeah, the last thing I'll say, and I said this at the end of the last tweet, and this is directly to Charlotte, just so you know, on the economic side, I'm not going to consider Mibera a success until the liquid backing of each Mibera is more than the floor price of a single Milady. So someone who's holding a Mibera should be able to take a loan against their Mibera, and that loan should be more than the floor price of a Milady. I'm not going to comment on the premium on that, but that's the type of orientation, that's the type of trajectory, that's the horizon that we're looking to. And we've got a whole bunch of cybernetic and cypherpunk levers to pull. And I invite you in a friendly, competitive way with Milady, as the sun does the moon, to, like, you know, come back into the arena, like, to get engaged again, to pull the levers that you have access to, because I don't know, like, the timeline's not fun. It hasn't been fun for a while. People have been and I don't know, let's have fun online again.
Yeah, very cool. So this liquid backing thing, floor price of Milady now, it's 3.3 ETH. So that's
for time. Let's pump.
That's a statement.
Let's pump it. Yeah. It could be. Look, it could be 10 ETH. I'd say the same thing. Like, yeah.
Nice. I love that. What I love about you and about you did it also with Henlo, that you show up every day. So we discussed it in our community that there is no other founder who makes a project and he's daily in the spaces, only start only a space, and then okay, ask me questions, and then you bring up people and you talk to them, you are interested in them, you asking them their opinions. So I haven't seen that before, and I love it. So that's why you know, in not in crypto, but in investment worlds, and if you do financial decisions, they often say bet on founders, not bet on the project, bet on teams and bet on founders. And I think you are one of the best founders out there. A bit schizo, but we love you how you are. So yeah, I'm in. I love it.
I definitely look. Appreciate the words, and I'm a loudmouth, and I'm the face of it, so I get a lot of Zoz. Yeah, Zoz wrote it up. It was Law 6. Check out Zoz's in the comments here. Law 6 Botter Law. Yeah. 0xzoz. Check out their account for kind of a more detailed account of that bot experience in the mint process. Zoz, my intention is to sort you guys out. It's just such an edge case, those of you who spent a lot of money. But can you send me a DM on Twitter, and I'll make sure at this 11th hour it's sorted out. What was I going to say? I get a lot of the credit, right? And there's aspects where that's warranted. But actually, THJ is such a fucking crack team. I can't even describe it. How do I put it? There are teams where they have a single project, like, and it's their whole focus. And sometimes I look at them and I'm like, shit, we're outperforming you and we're juggling 10 projects. Like, it's not, I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it's hard to keep up with us because the team is just cracked. And so anytime I receive flowers, I love to receive them, but I also want to pay tribute where tribute is owed. And the THJ team is the fundamental first product of THJ is the team, because for example, Mibera, I was like, guys, I'm focusing on Mibera. They've shipped Hemlockers more or less around within 24 hours of Mibera launch. Like, and then you've got teams out there who've raised obnoxious amounts of money being like, oh, we can't TGE because the markets are shaking. Fucking grow a pair. What the fuck? Like, just ship. Like, ship quality, show up each day. I don't know. I hear a lot of people making excuses about stuff, and I just hear, I hear fear, and I don't feel that fear. So I feel for them, because I wonder what that would be like to operate from a fearful driver. It must suck.
Nice, yeah. So of course, when I mean you, you are the face of the Honey Jar. You are out there and talking to the people. But yeah, of course, you have a good team behind you, and kudos also to the Honey Jar team. We have actually someone from our community who joined recently your team, your mod team. So that makes me proud too. Yeah, maybe one question: do you intend to make an IRL rave sometime?
So there's been the first one was in Brussels, and then there was one in Singapore. The Singapore one sucked. I'll tell you why. I mean, it was good.
So
the music was
Mibera, or was it?
Well, look, it's the Singapore one. The venue and the team were amazing, but it catered too much to the crypto crowd, and crypto crowd don't know how to let go. Like, they're still in the BD mindset. The way to do it differently, it would, and this is what ended up happening with Denver, and as shout out to Louis, Tez, and Baby Bearer for this, is the most important thing is to connect with the local rave scene, because they're people who know their scene, they know their city, they know the infrastructure, they know how to party in that context, right? They're the priority. Fuck crypto, real rave shit. Like, that's the energy of Mibera. I think Bearer Rave team are doing such a good job. We don't need to. The Mibera team themselves don't need to like do it ourselves. But of course, Baby Bearer and Tez are kind of like just as deeply responsible for. Again, with Mibera, I get a lot of kudos and loudmouth. But it was definitely a collective creation as to the form. A lot of I will take credit for the conceptual framework and consuming everything that was Milady, and getting new layers to mental illness. I did that. But then once those visions were communicated, Gods, Fedor, Cloud, Kicker, Baby Bearer, Sunbearer, Tez. There's also this lad. Let me give you an example. There's a lad called Who is Mike Jones. He's got maybe 200 followers, maybe more now. He's been making Mibera memes for 2 years with like 200 followers, like if not daily, weekly, right? We've got these types of people who are just these signals, and they're like, I love this shit. And they just have been, we've now got folks like Delana Del Rey, who is there are these emerging people who are just like, this is where I want to create and make my art. This is my home now. I don't care about engagement. I'm just putting stuff out. But yeah, that's a long answer. I think whilst the B-Rave team, who I'd say are Mibera adjacent, are doing the stuff that they are, I do think we can explore, once the Mibera economy occurs, really anyone should be able to put on a Mibera rave, right? That's the spirit of this thing. That's what I think will happen. I would expect that to happen. I don't know how it's going to occur. Janny, personally, I'm connected still to the Free Party movement. Funds from, we'll get into this in the technical section, 1% of the funds from the Mibera economy model. This will make sense to you. If it doesn't make sense now, it will make sense to you soon, right? But 1% of all revenue that flows through Mibera, we're going to send to Ross Ulbricht, who's recently come out from the Silk Road. And a percentage is going to go to free party legal aid. So people who are still putting on free parties and getting into legal problems, we're going to make sure funds are going into those types of avenues as well.
Crazy. No, I love that. Really decentralized way. Everyone can organize a rave. Yeah, think that's cool. Yeah, I don't know if you have still time, if you want to still
because maybe something we could do with the rave thing is people should just DIY a rave. They should put one on, and if there's enough Mibera holders there who all vouch for it, who all say yes, this is a free party spirit, then maybe we have a thing where there's like a fund that people can request like funds and assistance for the next party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's talk about so I'm pulling from this law document 6. It's the reflection. Again, folks, if there's only one thing that you do, read the Milady design notes, creative design notes. The very first thing on goldenlight.mirror.xyz. Once you read that, then read Law 6 of Mabera. Where do you drop the links?
I can put it in as a comment.
Hang on a sec. If you type in golden, like golden light, like LIGHT, mirror, like a mirror on the wall that you look in, and Milady into a search engine, the top hit should be Charlotte Fang, Milady Maker notes on the design process.
Only if you type in golden light mirror, it's the first thing that pops up is from Charlotte Fang.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So read that as a starting point, and then read Law 6 document from Mabera. To get to the law documents, I think just go to the Mabera Twitter page, and it will link you to the Mirror, and you're looking for Law 6. So I'm going to read from Law 6 now. So the creation process. So we defined archetypes. So in Milady language, they're cores. The archetypes that we're covering come from free rave history. Chicago, Detroit, New York, Milady, free techno, acid house. Why those ones in particular? Well, basically in Chicago and Detroit and everywhere was roughly in an emergent from or in recession. In Detroit, you had the emergence of artists acquiring musical instruments that didn't have any commercial value, so they were cheap as fuck. This comes from traditions such as one of the reasons jazz is as popular as it is in places is a lot of the time, a lot of those expensive instruments would get robbed from the back of ships and then get redistributed amongst community who maybe didn't have the financial capital to get into that stuff. Jazz was, if you listen to Gil Scott-Heron, like it wasn't this highfalutin black version of classical music. It was dance music for the grassroots, for the underground, for the whatever. It was a place to come together and to let go when you're living in systems that kind of like press you down. And so this similar trend of activity of people acquiring a means of creativity for cheap. So the Roland 303s were considered to be trash, right? And so over in Detroit, they started experimenting with the early pioneers, these kind of repetitive beats. This was Detroit house and stuff like that. So around that time, over in Europe, the UK scene, but especially around the Ibiza party scene, this coincided with the emergence of a new actor in the scene. What emerged at that scene at that time with a set of 4 quite prolific DJs from the UK dance scene was MDMA and, well, ecstasy, right? It took Ibiza like a fucking wildfire. And the DJs and the musicians, this set of 4, saw the impact on the crowd, right? And before long, ecstasy found its way into the major dance hubs of the UK. We're talking London, we're talking Bristol, we're talking Manchester. Another component that was happening.
Ibiza. I absolutely love that.
Another thing that was happening was that basically there was a dialogue happening. There was a dialogue happening between Detroit, musically speaking, and the acid house movement over in the UK, right? And there was a backwards and a forwards kind of like one-upmanship as basically those sounds developed and this type of thing, adjacent to and alongside the proliferation of these different molecules that people were starting to experiment with. Now, as I mentioned, it was a time of recession. And so a lot of these clubs locked a lot of people out. A lot of people didn't have money to pay to get into them, but word was spreading about what was happening on those dance floors. And so those of us who couldn't afford to get into the clubs or who were too young started using buildings or breaking into and squatting buildings. We started acquiring speakers, and we started putting on parties. Now, of course, this itself drew down on a very rich musical history in the UK of, for example, black and brown music, where they just, historically speaking, in the post-war period, were locked out of what was at the time like a white status quo infrastructure. And so that's where you had these kind of the emergent sound culture that was kind of influenced by kind of, let's say, Jamaican cultures of West Indian and Caribbean people putting on parties in their houses, and it would be in a family home and this type of thing. So there was very much already in the spirit of the scene, let's say, in the UK of there's always some community in some type of a recession, and there's always a creative spirit to create spaces where you feel alive, where you feel open and whatever. And so those historical kind of experiences with, let's say, the black communities, the Caribbean communities, brown communities were often locked out of the black communities, so they created their own versions. But there was very much like this emergent DIY culture that was kind of influenced from Caribbean, Jamaican, like all of this stuff was kind of in the mix. And so when that hit into early kind of rave culture, we're talking kind of like 80s period, late 70s, and kind of like off the back of all of the punk type stuff, people just started putting on these free parties, what became raves. And it started with kind of like acid house as a dialogue between Chicago, Detroit, New York, but then that influenced stuff like free techno. Again, like we're talking about a spirit where the cops would come in, they'd steal the generator, you then find a way to hijack electricity from the mains through into the building, and this type of thing. Like these are the types of spirits of the I really do, if you don't know much about that history, it's really rich. But there's always this cat and mouse game where you have movements of freedom-loving people doing stuff which gives them a sense of power and freedom, and then the pendulum swings and you have suppression by the status quo. And it's this cat and mouse game of there's too much freedom here, too much chaos going on there, then there's suppression, then there's new forms and new ways that this gets unleashed. I could talk about this for a long time, but I'll stop there. That's kind of like giving you a bit of a taste of why did we choose these archetypes. Okay, so each, I'm going to skip past the, oh yeah, now if you're scrolling down, if you're with me, I'm on the creation process of Law 6. You'll see there's a meme where we've got a Mabera and a Milady, and they're pulling apart a Stretch Armstrong, and on the Stretch Armstrong is Gumi's face. You've now got a bit of the lore for what's the meaning behind this meme. Of course, Charlotte Fang replied to this meme and with crying face saying, "I know, I recommended them to them. This was a while ago. This was all the way back in 2023." Okay, so let's talk about the scale of the art here. So Milady has 236 traits. Redacted Remelios have 526 traits. Mabera has 1,337 traits, right? Each of those traits is in the collection for a reason, has been meticulously curated and then created by Gumi. Each trait in and of itself derives some type of history from music, technology, conscious cultures, or rave and this type of thing. Now, where can I go? Yeah, parts. There's because we're cypherpunks, we've created essentially a Frankenstein algorithm that puts all of this stuff together through a 7-stage engine that's been built by Zaguchi. Zaguchi's Chad on the THJ team. He was responsible for launching the Henlo token. We flew him out to the Caymans. He was the one who deployed the liquidity pools. There was this 10-minute gap between him posting the liquidity pools and the token distribution. That was a bug in that was some type of bug in the Berachain kind of Berascan. We were working with Clique, who also handled the Berachain Foundation thing, and we were in a live war room with them, and we were like, okay, liquidity's posted, press the button. And then they were like, fuck, the button's not working. We have to write software to build a side route around the button, and that took 10 minutes. So we get some FUD for that 10-minute gap. Everyone was lined up to do it immediate, like distributor, contract, press go on marketing and whatever. Some people accuse us of like trying to snipe or whatever. To those people who are out there who've said that type of thing, why the fuck would I do that? I've made it. Like, Gianni's got more than enough money. Why would I wreck my rep? But anyway, aside, Zaguchi's a Don. He's also the original, one of the co-founders of Kingdomly. He was their CTO. And he's also the Chad who's built a lot of the liquid backing stuff for, and all of the infrastructure for Henlockers and also AppDAO. Complete G. So he's written this generation engine, which runs through at a technical layer how they're created. I won't go there now because we're going to get into technicals tomorrow. But parts of the Mibera I would like to speak about, because I don't know that the depth of consideration and the philosophical and ideological kind of underpinnings here has quite necessarily been widely appreciated. So we've got, each Mibera is made up of 7 layers. 7 is a recurrent number through THJ mimetic. Meme math is an important part of Bera religion. There are 7 components to a honeycomb. This number will be repeated throughout the universe of THJ. Every time that we do this, the universe rewards us. Thank you, universe. We see the rewards because of all of the weird fucking numerology that continuously pops up through a chaos distributed set of factors that no one living entity could control. And we see it as fully an expression of the conscious universe having fun. And we're very happy to be in communion with the universe as it's chaotically expressed in this Jester energy. So drug dyads. So as I mentioned up at the top, let's just read it out. So Mibera embraces drugs, or more accurately, altered states of consciousness. We went into that, right? You can breathe and get into a different state. You can put on an NFT on social media and get into a different state. When you use social media, when you're scrolling, you are being put into a different state by the designers of the algorithm, by the designers of that stuff. They're putting you into a different state for the purposes of dysregulating your nervous system and making you more suggestible and open to influence so that they can then sell you in that state. That state is the product that they then sell to military ops, psy-ops, big media organizations and stuff who want to compel you into action in some type of direction, right? Whether or not, like, you're on drugs or whatever, when you use technology, you enter into an altered state of consciousness. I do agree with Milady in the sense that when you put on the PFP, there's a power there, right? I think that's not just true of Milady, but Milady were the most direct about talking about it. And Mibera is also a part of that tradition, but we take it, we evolve it. So, whereas many influential Miladies create various taboos and prohibitions, this is what I talk about Milady police state. There's stuff you're allowed to do, stuff you're not allowed to do, there's stuff you're meant to do, and then it's whatever. Mibera takes the other side of that trade and accepts molecules which alter states of consciousness as just matters of fact. Drugs are represented across consumer molecule dyads. So again, you see here, we've got a lot of these yin-yang, kind of like a dyad is one of the primitives of the universe. And they're not binary often, they're on some type of spectrum. They're consumer form and they're molecule form. So what I mean by that is in each Mibera, up in the left-hand corner, you'll have a molecule. There's 64 molecules. Some of them are, for example, serotonin or dopamine. Some of them might be THC. Some of them might be ketamine, MDMA. And then the consumer form. So each molecule then has a consumer form. So that's a handheld item. It might be a bag of pills. It might be a handful of light to mean, I don't know, fucking meditation or some shit. Okay, so each of the consumer items and molecules are assigned archetypes. So each of those columns, you can think of, there's 64 different consumer objects and there's 64 different molecules. And there's these different columns. And at the top of the column, you have either Chicago, Detroit, New York, you have Milady, Free Techno, or Acid House. So we've kind of divided these families of molecules. We've divided these families of molecules and objects into let's say, houses. And so the way that the algorithmic engine on a creative level determines what type, inverted commas, or what archetype of Mabera you have is essentially each different item and layer is a points game, and it's completely generated. The universe will decide what your Mabera is, whether it's Detroit or New York or Chicago Mabera, or maybe it's a Milady Mabera, or maybe it's a Free Techno Mabera, or maybe it's an Acid House Mabera. So next up, we have the rave archetypes. So for those of us who were cubs raised in the crucible of the 80s and 90s rave movement, fixating on Milady's adoption of rave was the portal through which this chironic honey poured. Geez, I didn't even get into all of the stuff about Saturnian time, chironic time, how it intersects with Greco-Roman stuff. That's we can go there another time. That's a whole other set of a deep rabbit hole Jenny spent a month in, and managed to emerge with only a slight bit of extra madness. But in essence, it is this timeline, this network spirituality, this inevitable accelerationism towards some type of singularity event, like a death drive, like Saturn, the Grim Reaper, standing there and saying, yes, but have you planted the seeds? Because if you don't, you're fucked and the yield won't be there. Saturn in linear time is that asshole boss who's like, yes, but you're a minute late to work. Like, why? Right? This is the linear death drive time, which kind of, I think, describes Milady. Then but there has always been different forms of time. A different form of time there's a spiral time. It's called chironic time. This is the time of, oh, isn't that a weird coincidence? Or isn't that a weird bit of timing? It's not involved in middles and beginnings and ends. It's not involved in like a death drive. The planet or the gods that is akin to the chironic time is Uranus. Uranus is one of the primordial forces in the universe. It's part of a dyad. The other the other component is Gaia, is the Earth. Uranus is like the sky, the dome. Of course, where else does a dome show up? In a speaker set. Okay, so where are we? Rave movement. So as a mirror of Milady, there's 4 main archetypes have gone into this. The scenes have been chosen, tribute to conversation. I've talked about all of this. Won't go into this one. We've spoken about it quite a lot. So part 3, ancient versus modern. This is fucking cool. I love this bit. This emerged. It just was right. This wasn't, we were conduits for this. It didn't really ever feel like we chose this. It chose us. So this is an energetic universal form finding manifestation in Mabera that none of us can quite account for or explain. So this is the ancient versus modern thing. So altering states of consciousness, consuming plants, or creating practices which help to achieve these transitions are not uniquely modern pursuits. Whether there's evidence of mushrooms preserved in honey in pyramids, which there are, or trippy rock art to do with Triskelions and this type of thing in caves in Ireland that predate the pyramids, near sites where magic mushrooms grow. It seems like animals and people have been getting high since time immemorial. And so each of the archetypes houses 8 drug dyads. And so whenever there's a modern synthetic version, we have also reflected the ancient plant ancestor version from which that molecule is derived. Now, as we know, 80 to 90% of modern medicine and contemporary fruit and vegetables, like your local tomato or whatever, originates in the jungles of the Amazon, right? This is where is the bedrock of and the origins of most foodstuffs in the world. So, for example, if you want to understand why a foodstuff exists on one part of the world, you need to look into the history of colonization, imperialization. People were moved around, but seeds and plants from different zones were moved from areas where, for example, people maybe were moved to grow sugar. And then that happened in different temperate zones. So, oh, look, we see a plant that they eat over here in the Amazon. Let's bring it over to the Pacific, where we've also got another sugar growing up going on. It's this whole kind of like communion in this type of sense. And so at heart, within Mbera, there is another, let's say, threshold that you can pass. And that is, are you a modern Mbera or are you an ancestor Mbera? And so the algorithm engine, depending on which of the traits emerge in your particular Mbera, some of them may be ancients in the sense that they might have, for example, instead of cane sugar, instead of refined sugar, you might be holding a cane sugar plant. You might be holding this type of thing. Rather than the processed version of cocaine, maybe you have the coca plant. We've got all of the, for example, MDMA, there's MDA, there's MMDA, which is nutmeg. So people in the Victorian times used to have dinner parties where they would grind up nutmeg and they would grind up loads of it and have that because it would get them high, a bit like MDMA, right? These different types of practices have just been going on for ages. They're just reflected in Mbera. This is also expressed in some pretty unique backgrounds. The backgrounds pull from these ancestor zones, whether it's Guyana and the Amazon, the largest waterfall on Earth, whether it's places in Canada, whether it's places in the States, whether it's these places I mentioned, Ireland. Ancient sites of kind of human civilization are kind of reflected. And this is what we mean by the jungle returns. Like the expression that's coming out through Mbera is not linear. There's some weird fucking shit going on with this collection, guys. I'm sorry for your loss, but also happy for your gain. We've been in it for 2 years, and I can tell you, I've never had such a high frequency of weird fucking shit happen to me in my life. And I'm a drug nut, right? I grew up in the free rave movement. I'm still in those scenes. I'm very used to weird shit happening to me. And for the last 2 years, it's been nothing short of insane. I'm really excited for more people to apply some attention, care within this collection, because I fully expect it's not because I'm special, right? It's because sometimes the universe wants to find a form of expression and it comes out. I deeply believe the Milady crew, they tapped into something, right? But it was kind of squandered in internet terms, in cypherpunk and kind of nerd terms. We say that the net treats censorship as damage in the network and roots around it, right? And I think it's the same with the universes. Universal expression and energy, and the jester universe wants to express itself, but then when mere humans have the misguided view that they can harness it and control it and shut it down and determine why and where and when, it just dissipates and scatters to the wind. Like, it's just the flow and ebb of life, in the same way that if the tide comes in and the tide goes out. Okay, so number 4, astrological techno-animism. So as an antidote to the perennial disembodiment of Miladies, so that's the schizo culture, it's the very online, it's typing a lot, it's like saying shit, but behind the scenes it's different, it's like divorced from the material reality, it's kind of very cerebral and whatever. Network spirituality, not in the sense of the philosophy of it, but the practice of it, The philosophy and the practice are really, there's a big difference. In reality, the practitioners of network spirituality, to be honest, is bullshit. Like, there's not very many people practicing network spirituality. Network spirituality in its as an idea form is I think one the universe wants out there. But currently the majority of practitioners of network spirituality are honestly full of shit, right? I think what the universe has wanted, and we're simply the messengers for this medium, is there needs to be another side to this, which is more the techno-animism. And we're not unique or special in coming up with this. We're simply borrowing from Shinto, from other stuff in this current contemporary form. But the way that it expresses within a Mabera is that each Mabera is assigned a birth date, a place on the planet, and that will help us determine an astrological placement as well. And we can do this because of the complexity of data inside the DNA of the Mabera is such that we can derive a unique fingerprint to each Mabera, such that it becomes a proxy for an embodied, in place, feet on the ground entity that is detached from you, right? You can be in communion with it, but you don't need to become it. This is what we mean by demon PNFT, right? Is you can think of Mabera as your companion on chain, online, so that you can get offline, right? We're building infrastructure, we'll get into this, so that the Mabera can be wandering around on chain and online. You can tap out for a bit, maybe go to an actual rave. But essentially, the counterpart to network spirituality, we're talking about network animism, in a sense. I'll come back to that in a minute. So compared to Milady, they only make use, I believe, of the bottom left and right of the Milady. So they've got the kind of health bar thing, and they've also got the rarity score. Within Mabera, we've decided to make use of all 4 quadrants. It just was what we felt was the most balanced, and it's happened over the course of maybe 100 variations and iterations. The bottom is the element and whether your Mabera is a modern or an ancestor. So the element is basically, are you air, water, earth, or fire? And then are you modern or are you ancient will be determined by the traits that you hold. Like if you've got a threshold number of ancient traits, then essentially you've got an ancient. That will also influence the birth year of your Mabera. So the birth year will just be way back when. If you're a modern, it's going to be set within like living humans amount of time. So the top left is the molecule. So as I say, there are 64 of them, which are split up amongst the 4 different archetypes. And these drugs represent, again, not just molecules like drugs, but maybe also, for example, dopamine or endorphins. You mentioned like the state that you get in after your hot and then cold plunge and then breathing, right? The top right is the astrological signs. So that's derived from the birth placement, time, and positioning. So then we can determine your unique fingerprint, astrologically speaking. And then this taps into a whole bunch of capability around people and underground economies and traditions who do stuff like chart readings and this type of thing. We're going to be, that's going to be one of the parts of the Mabera economy. I'll get into that in the technical section. And then lastly is the swag score, which is more your conventional kind of leaning into the stuff like the Miladies. So there will be that kind of conventional thing from NFTs around rarity, grails, and this type of thing. Number 6 is this idea around what I call DeFi or daemon NFTs. And this comes from a few different areas. So it's the D in computer operating system. So it's a daemon. It's a program that runs under the hood that the user doesn't need to directly control. It's what happens when you open your terminal and maybe tap in like PS or PSAUX or whatever. It's a bit rusty on that sysop side of things. but it's when you see your computer booting up and it's all that matrix shit that's kind of running all over the place. These are daemons, right? And what you have to remember about the people who are building computer systems is that stuff isn't built in isolation, right? The people who were working on computers at that time were largely being massively influenced by sci-fi. Sci-fi itself was deeply influenced by writers from native and Aboriginal cultures around animism and this type of thing. They were influencing each other and that type of stuff. You also had later on, there was a lot of kind of people using molecules who were involved in early computer code, which we can get into at another time. But as they were conceiving of what is at the very heart of these computing systems that we use, a lot of the time when you're inventing new stuff, part of what you need to go through in this process is when you're inventing, that names don't exist for the concepts of what you're dealing with. So you need to build out the concepts and then the words, the language, to kind of actually name what's going on. It's just as much poetry as it is engineering, right? There's a common joke amongst coders that the hardest thing is naming. Naming in a way where when someone's dealing with a new concept, you can transmit information to that person so that they understand and grok what's the conceptual model here that I'm actually dealing with. And so we're kind of pulling from those traditions deeply held. There's also in Greek belief, the divinities and supernatural beings, the nature of gods and humans. There was also this, there was always this kind of like notion that midway between gods and humans, you had these kind of demon entities. And then lastly, with techno-animism, it's kind of a cultural practice that imbues technology with both human and spiritual characteristics. I think it's a ideology and a spiritual kind of orientation, which I think reflects really well on crypto and what's going on if you let yourself go there. But yeah, essentially, I think the best way to think of Mibera is maybe as a companion on chain. With some of the stuff that we have coming down the pipeline, you'll see that more. But I think it's the first thing in crypto that's akin to like, what were those little companions, the digital companions that you had that were popular out of Japan? Tamagotchi, but it's a Tamagotchi that's on-chain living. Like, we're working with AI teams to essentially agentify like the Mibera so that they can actually within bounds do shit for you. But also they have all of the economic and cybernetic means to be able to coordinate all of that shit for you. That's where we're heading into, right? It's not this static image that you wear as a PFP, it's a companion, right? And then lastly is personhood. So you can essentially think and see, hopefully in the way that I've spoken about this, the DNA of a Mibera is, if you compare this to a CryptoPunk, I don't know that you can. A CryptoPunk ultimately is a picture that's more similar to a picture hanging up in a gallery. A Mibera is much more similar to someone you meet at a rave in an altered state of consciousness, and then the next day you're like, did that really happen? Was that person real? I know I'm left with a real experience and it's really impacted me. But then it also coincides with a on-chain online agent. So maybe it's more similar like a rave that happens in Second Life. But in Second Life, of course, it's within the economy and domain that is purely constrained to the Second Life world. What we're dealing with is a meta layer larger, where Miberas are going to be free roaming in a global economy, on-chain, on computer systems with no bounds, in distributed systems that governments can't turn off. Like, this is where we're headed to. So what's next? That's at the end of that document. There's more. This is the tip of the iceberg, but I hope I've done an okay. I know we were meant to just stick to the cultural side. I hope I've done justice, because I know there's so much that I've missed out. And yeah, I don't care. Like, no one could mint. I don't care. As long as I get to mint, I don't care. Like where we're headed, where we're headed, where we're headed. I'm not saying you won't have like. How do I put this? Where we're headed, there aren't floor prices. Like you don't have to worry about selling. Like where we're headed, I don't know how to put this. It might become. It might be clearer. It might be clearer once we speak about the technical aspects and the economy. But what I'll end on this note. Just because things were done away in the past doesn't mean what we're doing now was inconceivable 5 years ago. I've been in crypto since 2011. We're doing shit which like none of us expected back then. I've been full time since 2013. If you'd have told me the president of the United States is not going to sell Bitcoin, like that basically means when the state robs Americans, right? The only thing that the state won't sell is if they seize Bitcoin. If they sell your house, they will sell it. If they seize your assets, they will sell them. If they seize whatever, in whatever I'm using an extreme example, right? As it currently stands, if they get Bitcoin, they won't sell that shit. If you'd have told me, I wonder if Satoshi is alive to see that, because certainly in the heart of the white paper, there was a certain inferred perspective of the state from within Bitcoin. And I don't know that any of us working in the sector really saw where we're at coming. So yeah, just because stuff has happened in the past, just because NFTs have been one way, just because DeFi has been one way, doesn't mean you can't have people like Gianni, THJ, Mbera come in and just do things differently. So yeah, we're really, those of you who are out there and worried, I'd say, don't worry about it. You're good.
Love that. So I just had such a clear vision what Mibera is about, and my thinking is like Mibera is a companion, and we had NFTs, we have profile pictures where you can express your style, your ideology, but now you have a next iteration of that where you have also your digital footprint, and that evolves with your NFT, and that's very, very cool. And you touch also a lot of things with spiritualism, like yeah, like this astrology and meme maths and stuff like that. And I personally I love that. And looking at the comments, shout out to the comments here, they love that too. So we are very, very excited for the Mibera launch. I'm a bit I'm a bit sad that I have to wait for a month to see what I got, but that makes,
we'll see. If I mean, look, if let's see, it's not locked in. Like if, let's say, bull case, 100% of supply happens in phases 1, 2, and 3, then I don't know. We'll figure something out. Like we're not gonna lock in. What I will say, fuck it, maybe culturally. Shit, I don't want to leak. Should I leak it? You'll see soon.
Alpha.
Okay, fuck it.
Love it.
The website for Mibera is a complete restoration of the Silk Road website. What I mean by that is that we've gone through every existing archive that there is that we can find. We also asked the CIA, but they didn't reply. A restoration of the Silk Road website. All of the vendors are AI agents. all of the drugs which the real vendors did back in the day sold are NFTs in this system. You can purchase them, right? They won't be delivered to you straight away. Some of them might get seized at the border, and then you get a seizure notice from the state. You might get rug pulled by the vendor, and they absolutely insist to you that they did send it, and you can argue with these AI vendor agents. Some of you will actually receive your drug NFTs. Some of them will be unique batches. Now, all of the sale from that economy, right? Because these drugs, you can actually buy them. Where do they go? Liquid backing, and also Ross Ulbricht from the actual Silk Road, right? This system is also where the tributaries will launch from. It's kind of like a launch pad. And so this is where you operate the liquid backing from. But the reason I'm bringing this up is before you receive your Mabera, you're going to receive a parcel. Everyone will receive a different parcel. And so you will have something. We just need to determine and decide when to put those in people's hands so they can start trading them. And it depends on how much of supply is pre-purchased, if it's all bought. The other thing that I'll say, we'll get into this tomorrow more deeply, and this is why I can so confidently say the Mabera liquid backing will at some point surpass Milady, is the contracts will be ERC 721 ACs, which means royalties on chain are enforced. We will also be running protocol-owned liquidity, so there'll be fees from that. We'll use the income from those two different things to hook into Pol. So we will share those fees with boosters to our validators. And then we will send BGT to the liquid backing treasury so that for each Mabera, you're receiving not just fees from Silk Road, not just fees from tributaries, not just fees from royalties, not just fees from the trading in and around, not just fees from all of the open editions that we have going on, but also protocol emissions from the chain itself, right? So the way that this works is essentially the liquid backing of each circulating Mabera can only go up. Because if someone deposits a Mabera and takes out a loan for some fixed term, and then they don't repay that back, the treasury takes back that Mabera, right? It will then sell that Mabera to the open market at whatever the liquid backing is, plus some premium. That premium also goes into the liquid backing. So the liquid backing of each circulating Mabera is up only. And at some point, that liquid backing amount will pass the Milady floor price. It doesn't matter what Milady's floor price is. Could be 100 ETH, I don't care. At some point, it will pass it because it's up only. It might take 2 years, it might take 3, it might take 4, it might take 1. It's a question of when, not if. And to be honest with you, no one currently can compete with this because you can only build that type of a Ponzu on Berachain. Essentially, you know, a lot of people were outraged by the baddies putting on t-shirts saying paid to be here. Well, guess what, folks? We're all going to get paid to be here real soon. Everyone who's henlocking, paid to be here. Everyone who's in Mabera and taking stuff out from the liquid trade, paid to be here. Berachain, paid to be here. Like, people don't quite realize what's coming. First Pol, then people. But yeah, every other NFT in every other ecosystem, they won't be able to compete with building on Bera with teams that understand how to cybernetically hook into these chain level rewards and build economies that are supplemented, driven by, and amplified by the chain dynamics themselves. Like, just simply, we're in a new era. The future's here. It's just not evenly distributed yet.
Well said. A crazy alpha here at the end. I love it. I'm speechless. I was really bullish on the cultural and art side, but I know there's a lot of DeFi stuff. But this one, wow, with this website and
It's a Trojan horse. Like if Mibera was just the art and
Crazy.
culture, it would be one of the best collections on the planet, standalone. But ultimately, it is a Trojan horse or a Trojan bearer for the actual groundbreaking innovation and invention underneath the hood. But at heart, what we're talking about is communities who are self-aware, on-chain, have a lot of power. And at the moment, a lot of us are scattered to the wind for the last cycles in crypto, trying to jump into these short-termism things. And we're a pendulum swing back the other way, coming from an OG who's benefited from the appreciation from 2011 onwards. I've been around since Bitcoin was $1, right? I understand that time in the market is way better over the long horizon than timing the market. And we are simply a pendulum swing of the inevitability of teams figuring out how to reward people who actually understand the real long-term game and stay in place. Like, it's why Charlie Munger and whatever with BlackRock have the immense wealth that they do, is that this is the type of game that they're playing, right? It's time in it, not timing it.
Yeah, that's very much aligned with my philosophy. Hey, crazy stuff.
I gotta go. Gotta go do some whitelist stuff. There's probably, hang on, let me tell you. It's about 8 hours since I last checked my inbox. Let me tell you.
Oh my God.
It's probably not too bad because we're right near the end. Yeah, it's not too, there's only, how many is that? I'd guess, no. That's only 300 on Twitter. Hang on, let's look at Twitter. And that's just on personal. I haven't gone into the other ones.
Crazy.
Yeah, hang on. So there's there's 70 important messages that I need to get to before I can go out to all the rest of the people. And there's, Jesus, 1,000 in Telegram that are at the various different layers. So I'll get through those in the next few hours. After Mibera launches, I'm probably going to switch off my inboxes for a while, just because I'm severely mentally damaged since October. But I love it. It's we've built an entire new product called Alpha Score, which can automate a lot of this process in a quality, data-driven, and data-informed way. But that's for another day.
Okay, Jenny. Thank you very much for taking the time. It was a pleasure. And I'm very bullish on Mibera. Tomorrow is the mint, or in some different time zones, it's today. So yeah, tomorrow we will continue with the technical side and the cypherpunk side. So I'm very happy to host again, and let's continue then. Thank you very much, Jenny, for being here, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks for the time. Ooga booga. And furthermore, Mibera. Also,
Ooga
folks,
booga.
If you don't want to mint, don't mint. Don't worry about it. Like, you're good.
Ooga booga.
Ooga booga. Bye.
Bye.